Welcome to this new video on the Reddit Storylane. Imagine pouring your heart into a relationship, only to realize that the true challenge isn't between you and your partner, but with someone else, someone who holds an unsettling amount of influence over them. That's where my story begins. It's about love, loyalty, and the unexpected ways in which they can clash. Eric and I had been dating for almost 8 months. He was my first serious boyfriend since moving to the city, and things started off great. We had our fair share of differences, but I genuinely believed we were building something meaningful together. What I didn't anticipate was how much his best friend Olivia would factor into our relationship, and ultimately its downfall. Olivia wasn't just a best friend. She was practically his shadow. They had been inseparable since childhood, attending the same schools, working the same jobs, and sharing nearly every part of their lives. At first, I found their bond endearing. It's rare to see such a long-lasting friendship. But as time went on, I began to notice something unsettling. Olivia wasn't just part of Eric's life. She seemed to dictate it. Eric would consult Olivia on everything, from trivial choices like what to eat for dinner to major life decisions. It was almost like he couldn't function without her approval. 4 months into our relationship, he admitted that Olivia had been involved in deciding whether he should date me. That revelation shook me, but I stayed because at that point I had already fallen for him. Looking back, I realized that was my first mistake. Things came to a head one evening when I was sick. My roommate was out of town, and I felt miserable, so I called Eric for help. His hesitation was immediate. He told me he had plans with Olivia, a movie and lunch. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was his girlfriend, and I needed him, yet he was prioritizing a casual hangout with his best friend. Frustrated and hurt, I told him to go ahead and date Olivia instead, then hung up. To his credit, Eric did show up an hour later with homemade soup, apologizing profusely. For a moment, I thought things were back on track, but the next day he ghosted me. No calls, no texts. By midnight, I was worried sick. When he finally called, his tone was somber. He broke up with me, citing red flags in my behavior. I was blindsided. What red flags? He couldn't even give me a clear answer. It wasn't until days later that Eric called me again, begging for forgiveness. He confessed that Olivia had convinced him to break up with me. She had twisted normal, caring gestures, like cooking for him and buying him clothes, into signs of manipulation. In hindsight, it was obvious. Olivia saw me as a threat and used her influence over Eric to sabotage our relationship. What followed was a roller coaster of emotions. Eric wanted to reconcile, promising to keep our relationship a secret from Olivia to avoid further conflict. That suggestion was the final straw for me. How could I trust someone who couldn't stand up for our relationship? I told him the only way I'd consider getting back together was if he confronted Olivia and set boundaries. Reluctantly, he agreed. I'll admit, my request wasn't entirely pure-hearted. I wanted Olivia to feel the sting of rejection, just as I had. Eric sent her a message, asserting his independence, and shared the screenshot with me. Satisfied, I blocked them both. Petty? Perhaps. But after everything I'd been through, it felt justified. Since then, life has moved on. I've started seeing someone new, a kind, genuine person who values open communication. As for Eric and Olivia, I've heard through the grapevine that they're as inseparable as ever. Maybe they deserve each other. All I know is I've learned my lesson about love, loyalty, and the importance of setting boundaries early on. But let me take a moment to really delve into what this experience taught me. Relationships are rarely just about two people. There are always external factors, friends, family, even societal expectations, that can influence the dynamic. However, what sets successful relationships apart is the ability of both individuals to prioritize each other and navigate those external pressures together. Reflecting on my relationship with Eric, I can see now that there were red flags I chose to ignore. The most glaring one was his inability to set boundaries with Olivia. Boundaries are crucial in any relationship, not just romantic ones. They define what is acceptable and what isn't, ensuring that all parties feel respected and valued. Without boundaries, relationships become unbalanced, and resentment can easily take root. Another lesson I learned is the importance of self-worth. At the time, I was so focused on making the relationship work that I neglected my own needs and feelings. I allowed myself to be treated as a secondary priority, which only reinforced the imbalance in our relationship. It's vital to remember that love should never come at the expense of your self-respect. Looking back, I also realized the role communication plays in addressing conflicts. Instead of addressing my concerns with Eric early on, I bottled up my frustrations until they reached a boiling point. Open and honest communication might have helped us address the issues with Olivia before they spiraled out of control. Of course, that's assuming Eric was willing to listen and make changes, a big if in hindsight. In the months following the breakup, I threw myself into self-reflection and personal growth. I started journaling, which helped me process my emotions and gain clarity about what I wanted in a relationship. I also began setting boundaries in all areas of my life, not just romantically. For instance, I learned to say no to friends and family when their requests didn't align with my priorities or values. One of the most empowering steps I took was seeking therapy. Talking to a professional helped me unpack the patterns in my relationships and understand why I had allowed certain behaviors to continue unchecked. It was a transformative experience that gave me the tools to build healthier, more balanced connections moving forward. And then there's the matter of forgiveness. For a long time, I harbored resentment toward both Eric and Olivia, but holding on to that anger only weighed me down. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning their actions. It means releasing myself from the grip of negative emotions. It's about finding peace and moving forward without the baggage of the past. Today, I'm in a much better place. My current relationship is built on mutual respect and open communication. We support each other's growth and work together to overcome challenges. It's a stark contrast to what I experienced with Eric, and it's a testament to the importance of choosing a partner who aligns with your values. For anyone out there dealing with a similar situation, I want you to know that you're not alone. It's okay to walk away from a relationship that doesn't serve you, even if it's painful in the moment. Trust me, the pain is temporary, but the lessons you learn will stay with you forever. Now, as I reflect further, I realize there's even more depth to the lessons I've learned. Relationships often mirror the dynamics we have with ourselves. If we are unsure, insecure, or unable to set boundaries internally, that will manifest in our external connections. My time with Eric and the influence of Olivia taught me to look inward. Who was I outside of that relationship? What values truly mattered to me? And how could I uphold them in the face of adversity? Self-awareness became my greatest tool. I started to identify patterns not just in my romantic relationships, but in my friendships and family dynamics. I asked myself hard questions. Why was I drawn to someone who couldn't prioritize me? Why did I let Olivia's opinion hold such weight over my sense of worth? Answering these questions wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my growth. One surprising outcome of this introspection was a newfound appreciation for solitude. I used to think that being single meant being lonely, but in the months after Eric, I discovered the opposite. I began to relish the freedom to make choices based solely on my desires and needs. I took up new hobbies, traveled solo, and spent quality time with myself. It was liberating. Another realization was the importance of building a strong support system. I had friends and family who had always been there for me, but during my relationship with Eric, I had unintentionally pushed some of them away. Reconnecting with them reminded me of the value of unconditional love and support, something I hadn't truly felt from Eric. I also started to think about the kind of partner I wanted in the future. Instead of focusing on superficial qualities, I began to prioritize emotional intelligence, integrity, and the ability to communicate effectively. I made a list of non-negotiables, not as a rigid set of rules, but as a guide to ensure I wouldn't settle for less than I deserved. In the process of rebuilding myself, I stumbled upon communities of people who shared similar experiences. Online forums, support groups, and even workshops on self-growth became invaluable resources. Hearing others' stories and sharing my own made me feel less alone. It also reinforced the idea that everyone has their own journey and that it's okay to stumble as long as you keep moving forward. Perhaps the most profound lesson was learning to let go, not just of Eric and Olivia, but of the version of myself that tolerated less than I deserved. I realized that every experience, no matter how painful, shapes us into who we are meant to be. Eric and Olivia were a chapter in my story, but they weren't the whole book. If there's one thing I want anyone reading or listening to this to take away, it's this: you are enough. You don't need anyone else's validation to know your worth. The right people will see you, value you, and support you without hesitation. And when you encounter challenges or heartbreak, remember that those moments are opportunities for growth. They're the stepping stones to becoming the best version of yourself. So if you're navigating a complicated relationship or trying to heal from a breakup, know that it's okay to put yourself first. It's okay to demand respect and to walk away when it's not given. It's okay to start over, no matter how daunting it seems. Because in the end, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself.